call the meeting to order. Everyone's had an opportunity to look at the minutes. I would assume. If any questions, I'll entertain. If not any questions, I'll entertain those to approve. Motion to approve. Second. Second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. We'll begin with committee reports and is that what you're up?
Audit committee has a meeting scheduled for October 24th, and
Anything else on that? We're good. Okay, David Thomas.
So codes and zoning's next meeting will be on the 5th at 6 o'clock here in the mayor's office. What we're gonna be looking at is what got sent back to us. What's in front of you, the ordinance, that is the amended version. So everything that was put in the amendment to the ordinance on Monday night's meeting is now represented in what you have in front of you. So you'll notice that industrial has been removed from both the title and the body. On the back, the sentence in section B, prohibited wall materials shall not be used on road frontage exteriors. So the on-road frontage exteriors was added. In the preferred building materials, the surface concrete or split face block and hard coat or textured stucco have now been added to preferred building materials. Per that amendment.
Just a point of discussion, I believe the aluminum metal siding was actually moved to limited in that discussion.
Okay.
That's what we're gonna do this one.
Okay. Then I will get that adjusted also then.
So they have to go back before committee.
Well, it'll go, well, I mean, the amendment was passed, so it's now amended. It'll go before, subcommittee on Thursday, then planning on Monday, and then back before the body at the end.
Y'all's committee meeting is this next week.
Is this Thursday?
this has
So this is not.
No, no, I just did this for our purpose here. There's,
You know, I think it's on.
Anything else?
but also there's. In Rick Gregory's going through codes and zoning, there's a reference to lot size. And in that reference, it refers to fire protection. And he went all through both city and the county. And he couldn't find a definition for what is fire protection. So we are now looking at coming up with a definition to feel that you can't have a requirement without it being defined. What I found talking with the water department is minimum requirement for a fire truck to attach to a hydrant is 500 gallons per minute on pressure and a 6-inch line. If you don't have that, then you can't attach a fire truck to it. So that to me is a starting point for a minimum of fire protection. But that's got to be hashed out. We've got to have a definition if we're going to have a requirement in zoning.
Can you attach a tanker to fill to something that doesn't have, because to
No,
a truck that went to an engine,
according to the
It's
water
gonna be
department,
distributed.
no. You can't attach it to, You
even
can't
a tanker
attach
to fill?
you can't attach a pump to it because you'll collapse the line. Well, like I said, that's what Tommy said. It's that minimum is 6-inch line at 500 gallons per minute. So. Wait a minute, let me check that out.
I didn't know if
Yeah.
that was the case for the tanker, because it doesn't, it's a different deal.
Yeah,
I
you're
mean,
first filling in.
I've driven the brush truck into a creek,
Mhm.
dropped a siphon into the creek, took that line and ran it up to the tanker and filled the tanker from the brush truck out of the creek.
Yeah, and talking with Tommy, the reason you have to have the 6-inch line is because it will collapse a 4-inch. There's not enough structural integrity to hook a pump to it.
Understood.
Is that in question to the zoning or to lot, you said to lot size?
In the in the actual zoning requirement, I believe that is in residential. You can't have, the way the ordinance sets now. You can't go to a certain size lot without having fire protection. Is the way the ordinance says, but there's no definition on what is fire protection. Now, what we've done for the subdivision side of things is you gotta have a fire hydrant on a subdivision every 500 foot, which then provides fire protection. And then, that meets the qualification for doing the smaller, but if you're just doing a standalone lot, well, you have to have some other definition of what fire protection is outside of the subdivision regulations.
Questions? Okay, next up. So. Emergency service.
We have a meeting table for Notre Dame. We are not meeting in October.
Finance,
Of course, finance met on the third Monday night in September. Went through the trustees' cash balances. Financial summaries, all things looked to be in pretty decent order at this point. We had a few clarifications that will come up in the next meeting. On a couple of questions that were asked. We'll bring those out. Light discussion on, I know we had the budget amendment that was originally set for the mayor's office, employee, and the sheriff's department, the dispatcher, which were both sent back, postponed is the word it was used at that point in time, for further information. And that will come up, I'm expecting in the next finance, third Monday night.
refresh my memory, did we consolidate the total county debt? In that.
All county debts are under one loan. At the point, I take that back. The new debt that was taken on is on fixed, and the other county was separated, or so there's two loans.
Okay, so there's two.
There's two at this point. All the pieces that were individual were put into one, and the new debt that was taken on for the school pieces was put on.
So we moved that to protect ourselves on interest rates.
It's knowing where our interest rate is, no matter what. We planned the last year's budget on an interest rate of below 2%, or right at 2%, and then during that year we saw that interest rate above 5%. So
Remind me what the amount of money we're getting from Core Civic now, as far as property, is it 1.7?
that would have to be, I'd have to go look at that number exactly. I mean, it's 40% of the value of the property.
Is that close?
1.5, what I was thinking.
1.5.
Somewhere, it doesn't take long to figure it out. Commercial properties at 40% of the assessed value. So it's literally, look at the assessed value, you look at Tennessee Property Viewer, look at the assessed value. It's 40% of that. It's an easy function, so I can get that in a few minutes.
On the Enbridge project, will we be in the dark until the state comptroller places a value on that final building out there?
From my understanding, it would be when the comptroller is at whatever they decide to place that value at, if it's built at that point in time. So it would be not just the building. We do have to realize that it's also lines in the ground, all those pieces that come to play, not
Substation.
substation piece, and all that.
Pumping station.
But it would, from what I've been able to understand at this point, when you're assessing something, if they go to assess your home, they're gonna look at comps. I don't know what comps is, what I've been told that we'd be looking at on this, so there's nothing to really get an idea of what it would be, truthfully. Everything we've been told us, there's nothing to comp it to, at this point. So, I think that still hinges on some deals being signed, so I don't know when that will be signed or not signed. That hinges on a last discussion with them, that hinges on TVA acknowledging that they will take their gas. So. I'll find a cool city.
Because the station they're planning on building that they propose is actually bigger than the Columbia Gulf, correct? And it's gonna be enclosed versus.
Considerably bigger, yeah, like maybe 2 times. Maybe that's maybe, well,
I swear since the last time I looked at that, that there's a reason that it's not called property tax, it's ad valorem tax. And there is a difference. in how that's gonna be.
Like this property tax would increase, when theirs is going to decrease as they devalue.
yeah, you understand that.
Gonna take a few minutes to.
Are they only donated money to the help center stuff already? Is that in?
They donated it to the fire department. And
To
we
the-
do scale up.
And the Goose Gala and, allergies, fire department, Chamber of Commerce. Help Center,
School.
Well, at the last meeting that they came to, the gentleman I was talking with mentioned that there were funds to donate to the community.
Mhm.
And that he also had separate funds for this particular county because of that project, that he could do on top of what Enbridge had than regular donating to.
they're being more to counties like ours because of the size of their project rather than counties that Pipes is going to be. Anything else, Mr. Bill?
Just looking at that, which you mentioned there with.
I can dig it out.
It looks like one.
There has been some discussion, if I can just throw this out, finance. There's been some discussion about the tremendous pressure that is being placed upon our law enforcement because of what's going on out there in the prison. And what an additional cost it is. And at some point in time, and I'm not sure how to go about it, we've got to get some hard numbers about the impact it's having and outside of the $300,000. I know I've talked to one of the attorneys this week, they said the court is loaded up.
Jury trial.
Yeah, just loaded up, I mean, like double what it was.
And they had to pay like 2 jailers or deputies to go pick them up.
But just processing. is-
Why are they having to pay, hold up, well, why are they having to pay to go pick them up? Because
Because they become state prison.
Yeah.
There are.
Sheriff's Department is
They become-
Once they can commit a crime in Trousdale County, it's a Trousdale County problem, regardless of where it's at Forest Civic or not.
And then we don't have the level of security
Yeah.
to hold those
that's what I'm wondering.
ones convicted murder, so they have to send them to River Bend or something like that.
They had to go do them. And they bring that trial.
They invited me one.
Okay, so I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're speaking as in not them just going to court. So if they're at Trouster Turner, Trouster Turner is responsible for taking them to court. Once at court, they're sentenced or whatever, then you're saying Trouster County Sheriff's Department is required to take him to the next facility?
Correct, and then when they come back for a hearing, for booking. Now, I will say the last time one of the sheriff's department people invited me down to observe a booking.
Mm-hmm,
So,
I've done.
so I sat there and watched the book, and that particular day, the state of Tennessee brought them up in a bus rather than, because it was a bunch of.
Right,
And so we did not have to transfer that to the state. But there has to be a way to come up with hard numbers to say this is what it's costing our county.
I think, we've asked the sheriff's department to try to track those costs. And I know Sheriff Russell mentioned it seemed to be difficult to track those costs, but if we're if we're making those moves, it should be something we can keep on. an eye on.
Each thing should have a
That's
cost
correct.
tag to it.
And it should have an itemized cost.
Yeah,
that you're saying.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, you could do that with a simple log,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
there should be an in and out log and mileage from vehicle to, hey, my mileage started at this time with a date and time, and then I traveled to this facility with a date and time, and you log your mileage. It's just basically a mileage log, and then you have to convert that over. I mean,
And then when there's a booking, how many officers are having to be tied to that, and are being tied up in that booking and the transfers and. There's some hard numbers from somewhere, and I'll talk with the sheriff about it because to see if we can start that process.
but don't he have someone doing like the records? Because normally in a jail or a prison system, either way, you have someone that is specifically tied to records. And I thought that was up in discussion back during budget and finance when we were trying to.
I think they already got that.
Someone that does the record,
Yeah, we already.
because records should be handling all of those transfers and all of that paperwork and data.
In my understanding, it's not just the prisoners that are, commit a crime and get arrested. It's also visitors bringing in drugs or, whatnot. And they get, once they're caught, when police are called out, they're arrested, and that has to be. So even the visitors are a burden sometimes on our police
I'm
force.
not disagreeing, I'm just saying that there's ways to track this, there's ways to.
It's probably the time to renegotiate the fee that they give us.
And I'm not saying that doesn't need to be done.
When was that contract done?
That
years
was,
ago?
yeah, that was under the previous.
Yeah.
It's a 3 or 4 year contract, so it's a very reasonable.
Yeah.
Right,
But without the numbers, it makes it right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Not what, 1 point, not even 1.2, 1.1 roughly. And they always pay in October, so they
Yeah.
get the 2, what's that, 2%? off
So
that.
that would just tell me that this week, that if the state ends up taking that place over. That's 1.1.
That's 1 point. 1 point, right now, roughly, real close this year, $1,995,806, $0.84.
I know when someone approached me about being sponsors, but we gave, the first thing they said is, we're paying you $25,000 a month, why would you get 5 years for the thing? But 300,000 is not covering, it's not covering what's about a home shop. Anyway,
Especially from what I'm understanding, it would be also nice to know in EMS, how often is our EMS department on call there? In other words, how many calls are we answering? Because that's taking away from our people as well.
But they do pay for the ambulance.
it's
I'm not saying they don't pay,
Yeah,
it's still
no,
taking
yes,
away.
the public,
They do.
that's a money maker.
I mean, I
It
don't.
is.
I don't say that front, but
but I don't think that the last that I was researched about that, I don't think they're doing as many calls out there
Correct.
as they were when it first started up.
I haven't heard that.
But it would be very hard for me to believe that the state will be taking over that facility. I think it's always been a talk.
Yeah.
Because the state is struggling themselves.
Evidently, this warden has cracked down some, it doesn't seem to be as.
we have a lot less inmates right now, right?
Mm,
We have a lot less inmates right
Anything else, Mr. Kelly? You good?
That concludes what you had asked there for that conversation, 1.1 million, let's, that's a lot of, tax dollars quick if that is gonna, that's gonna. I know that's just a conversation. That is,
There's a lot of money passing through. I never been, I get check signs like 5 million.
that takes,
Before I got this job, I ain't saying. I had to transfer money to one of my accounts to the personal accounts. If it's gonna be with me. you better not do it. Keep that much in mind.
You will be there. That's next meeting.
I keep it under 250. Anything else? Anything else, Mr. Bell? We good?
No, sir, at current, that's where we are. I know there's been a bit of discussion on where we're going with wheel tax. I think that's something that, with at this point, we'll let lie. I know there's committee arrangements and things that will likely have opportunities to move around. It's a move around month, so we'll let it lie. Even before October.
Anything else? You good?
Good.
We will move to Mr. Dennis. Mr. Dennis.
First one, I have a meeting. Working department heads from issues that we have postponed and deferred this week.
Are we fairly far along on the time block situation? I mean, the money's approved by the commission and I mean, we just need to implement it. Just done.
If you're asking me, I've heard conversations with time pilot.
Okay.
I've heard a conversation that it was in budget numbers. I've not gone back and looked at the budget numbers. But that it was budgeted forward, but as far as the implementation of it. I'm not familiar with exactly.
I'll follow up on that.
I look at it as well. I think I've got an email. To my understanding, it was budgeted and that original amount was budgeted. I've got an email. Some of that conversation is gonna come up in budget plans, maybe one.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Anything
That will come out.
anything else? Dennis, you good? Good. Mr. Gregory.
We haven't had a meeting. Our next meeting is October the 25th. I guess can you give us update is about the courthouse? I mean, that's where.
That's in the attorney's hands at this point. Mr. Election Commission, Steve, had asked about the floors and Cliff said this week that we just gonna have to go in there and buff them and possibly have to heat it until we include that in the filing with training, but to go ahead and get them in there. Decided to go ahead and do it. I still don't think costs have been paid.
What does the mayor, I'm sorry, what does Mr. Beller? If we go in and do work on it now, how is that going to affect the legal action?
I think we just added to a list.
Document before we start.
That's what you,
And what we do.
It's
document after.
I walked the walking track last night and that equipment's still being removed, but I'm gonna talk to Cliff about sticking that thing up because it's October. And we're hoping to have that thing open in May, it'd be wonderful we can turn around.
Hard to do anything in the cold pouring rain.
we do have a engineering company ready to put it together.
Mhm.
That's all.
Yeah, just ready. We keep getting bills from Kenny Homer too. Let's see.
While we're on the park conversation, I noticed in the last minutes, the Parker family had asked about the wooden plaque that was at the park. Have we found anything about that?
We just saved those wooden slats. That's gonna be put in that wall to use those still.
This is not talking about those, this is talking about the Trey Park plaque that was originally there. It says the Park family had asked about the plaque.
It has, Cliff says it was saved. I'll find out exactly where it is.
That's what it says. It says we need to be checking. I just want to make sure we had checked it on that public works.
So-
mentioned that.
To my understanding, I do believe it is saved with where the slats are stored.
And we're gonna put a memorial together for that, a wall. And all those other, put those in the wall on.
And I think they are having a ball festival down there, 14th. I think they got a big plans and everything.
2 to 7. I think it's got a bunch of videos.
Have we looked at selling maybe other boards for people in the community that might want to add to that wall?
I think
It's
it's
not been looked at yet. I mean, Flip brought that up. I mean, I don't know how you can, it won't be wood, but I mean, it's vinyl or
Tricks.
tricks. We can discuss it again. I mean, we talked about it at our last meeting. Nothing was.
Anything else?
Okay, under
Discuss committee appointments. How do y'all? What do y'all think? Yeah, change some of these committees? I've got a few disgruntled commissioners that like to be interactive in some committees. What is your opinion on committee size? Is five enough for committee or does someone need to be expanded? Someone has suggested possibly to bring back insurance committee and I agree. And then, I was asked tonight about the prison oversight committee.
It has to be.
And I think at one time, Mr. Ford may have said that maybe poor city didn't pay a lot of attention to that committee or.
Well,
Is that a fair assessment?
I can say in years past it was. To me, just being from a past employee there to knowing it kept the community involved, it kept the county commission involved. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know, remember exactly if it's an ACA requirement or if it's a TDOC requirement, that they are supposed to meet with the community as at least twice a year. And I think we did it quarterly. Which it kept us involved in knowing
You know,
of all the rickroll or anything that was transpiring, you know, what their population count was, you know, how many transfers, what their graduation things. It's very good to cut out of a lot of I guess how the drama and the gossip of how it really is. You actually get to see the facts of, because when I was there, I had computed a spreadsheet, you know, and it gave you a sheet. It told you your pop count. It told you how many you had in segregation, you know, how many you had that had graduated, how many employees you had, how many medical staff you had. So it eliminated a lot of those questions that you were hearing, hey, you're short-staffed here, you're short-staffed there. Well, yes, you might be short-staffed here, but the medical end might be doing good. You know, it just kind of kept you involved on that.
if y'all, if you have some input, let me know. If we put that committee together, any suggestion you have, you want to serve on. it.
I just know the public works has got a lot under it too. It's
Yes.
buildings and solid waste and park. I mean, that's a lot under one umbrella there.
Did we put insurance under?
No,
It's just,
no, it's just personnel.
Would
That's
you
a
like
lot.
to, would you like to divide public works?
That's a lot under that. one.
Like to make buildings separately?
Maybe. They probably
public
would.
works should go back to Parks and Rec and public works.
You know, maybe a building committee, then a park. I mean, we still got solid.
What did we have before? We had,
It's still fine, Parks and Rec.
Depends on what.
Solid
And
waste,
solid
solid
waste,
waste.
we had three.
Yeah.
you had actually three.
Buildings, parks and rec. And solid waste.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's in Parks and Rec and solid waste, you can probably say. But buildings seem to be a lot of,
I think.
they're getting left a little bit back side. Is what I'm saying. There's a lot of pieces. And the county has a couple of buildings here that fits to be. Need to be dealt with.
Big expenses.
Where are we gonna deal with them? How is it? You know, you've got some expenses coming that way. But still got a lot of buildings. There's a time in the near future, maybe it's not this year, might not be, we know that. But when the prison comes to play, our jail comes into place, there's two other buildings that we hope something's happening, consolidation in one area. So,
Speaking of buildings, we've, I'm getting into other ones, we've, started the phase one environmental study of the Parker building, the whole building, which will be followed by structural engineer getting there, tell us what kind of buildings. The award school committee signed documents to give the Environmental Protection Agency access to the former city dump. They'll go in and do a phase one there. If they don't find any issues, Then we'll be in line for a grant, pulling that up in like a. Which the state is really excited about this project because it's tied to the history of the school. I'm meeting with GNRC next week. There are 2 grant writers to talk with a wish list. One of which is to do some kind of historical preservation of the Ward School. They're interested in doing that, or historical restoration is interested in doing that. If you can take the building and use it to the public good. So we need to be thinking in terms of exactly. That's 2 of the things that are moving. My next move, I get more complaints about the curbs downtown than any other issue in town, except the red light coming up Broadway. And the way that it is computerized, but those 2, but still, people talk about downtown. So I'm gonna go to the engineer that designed that. And get him up here and say, you made this, how do you fix it? And I mean, the guy that wrote it. And see what we do. Then there's been a turnover at TDOT again on the money between the engineer and it's not Marge, who is it? Not Marge Williams. They're still hung up on the $70,000. TDOT.
The parking, the payment, the conversation for the downtown project.
TDOT will not release the $70,000 and sign off on it. So until they do, can't do anything. And in the meantime, the curves just get blacker.
They're still arguing that we have a cost
They can't
that
agree.
we paid on the.
They agree we overpaid, but they can't agree on when to release the money. And we still owe the construction company a little bit of money. We're not gonna pay them until we get our money. So it hadn't been settled.
There's no chance of legal action from the company we owe, is it? I mean,
Not at this point.
so I mean, that would be
We did finally get the Donahoe Taylor parking lot paved. And you probably noticed that City Hall thing has been sealed and restriped, which is a good thing. They did get Senior Center sealed and restriped. And so some things have happened there. I met with Eric Wallace last week or 2 weeks ago, and he agreed to move the old Chevy that's blocking your view when you come off Foxhall, take a left. And I told him if he would keep an updated license plate on that car, he could park it behind his house. He did sell it, say he had a couple of cars sold, but it'll be next year. So.
how many lots does he have then? How many lots does he have? His home lot is, how many lots?
Just the one
lot?
across the street.
Just one lot. They're allowed one parked vehicle, non-licensed per lot.
Mhm.
in
Well,
traffic.
Well, over there, he's got,
I'm just, that's what I'm saying, that's all they're allowed, so.
and of course, he still owns the 4 acres. Oh, someone was visiting with someone at TDOT last week, and they've already hired a construction company to take the food. So that's, they've given that to someone else. It should matter when they get there and do that.
We're about to build it by the bridge.
They've already put a temporary pylon under there so they can tear the building down, which is gonna open up property to the Ward property, except for the 4 acres that Eric owns and still negotiating. He's real proud of that.
Yeah, circling back to what you were talking about with Ward School and then looking into the EPA, looking into the whole dump. You said if there's no issues, then they can move forward. What if there is issues? What liability are we?
Now, that's interesting that you mentioned that because we were advised to have a third party do the negotiating to write this grant, which is GNRC, which means if there were issues, it would not fall either on the Ward School, 501(c) or on the county. That everything would stop, I think, in ownership. So, good question, but if we kind of handle it.
There's been certain elder residents who said we might want to just let sleeping dogs lie with that.
We thought about that.
Yeah.
But we have a great
The cost to
advisor.
abate that would be,
Mhm.
the cost to abate that land would be unbelievable.
If the county owned it and they went in there and found a lot of problems, we would have to clean it up. So the state advised us properly to have GNRC apply for the grant, and if there were issues, it would stop right there. So, good question, and it is what it is. That's all I have from the mayor's office. Any further comment? Don't see any public here to comment. Anything else?
I would like to, I mean, just make a statement of the discussion over the ordinance that was put forward on the architectural standards last Monday. I know the planning commission has been asking for that type of discussion when we bring things forward. And I really appreciated just that, being able to have that open discussion, and instead of just having something shut down, yes or no, to actually take the work and let's make amendments and make it better. There's a lot of places that we just don't have any regulations. And as planning is looking at it and looking down the road, the last thing we want to be is a big hole for regulations that everyone else has done regulations around. So then everyone who doesn't want to apply, to deal with those just comes here. So may not agree with everything that comes out of planning, but give planning some direction to what you do want. Historically, the commission has been very short-sighted when it comes to planning and looking down the road past either the next election or even 5 years down the road. Haven't done an all-out plan 20 years since back in the early 90s, late 80s. That plan, actually, when you look at that thing, man, they were right on. The growth they said we were going to have, we have in the places they said. I know the former mayor was trying to get some sort of plan, but got caught up in this whole, master plan versus this plan and that plan. And then COVID hit and all the balls got dropped. And I mean, we have a planning commission that doesn't have a plan. And we have a hodgepodge of regulations for codes and zoning to go by. I don't think people actually know how much we do or don't have. And it does need to be addressed. However it needs to be addressed, that's for discussion. But it's been left alone for too long, and we are growing. There are people coming in from outside the county and state, and we've got to have something put in place.
So, and I think in all counties our size, especially on the 50-mile perimeter, and that's our experience in the fact that we got caught. With not expecting the growth that we're expecting, so everyone's scrambling, and I think we get them.
But I really did appreciate the discussion and the attempts that were made to make it more palatable and make it better. And I just wanted to make that statement.
I was negligent in not welcoming Commissioner Taylor to executive committee. That would let him speak. Look forward to working with you and everyone here. Anything else before we adjourn? Yes, sir.
Just as you're looking at this, the nomenclature on the ordinance that we're looking at.
Yeah.
4.143.
Yeah.
I've been trying to go back and find out what 141 and 142 were. I found 140, but I never found 192 that were ever passed.
Okay.
So you find why that's named 143.
That is what GNRC put it as when they drew it up originally. So I'll go back and double check that. And that might not have been, because we had those others that didn't get passed, that got brought through, and that might have been just a mistake on their part of the numbering of that. So we can go back and we can adjust that.
Speaking of GNRC, we got their new contract. And of course, as in the past, they went up on the fees again. And they're limiting us to two visits a month. Should we ask for 4? And
How much is it
supposedly,
going up?
Hmm?
How much is it going up?
oh, another $1,000. $18,000.
I understand we need them from a grant standpoint, but their planning side of their service, it stinks. We've had, since Rick left, this new person will be our third representative from the.
Supposedly they're supposed to provide some training for our commissioners, and that hasn't happened.
No, it's here's a webinar to go watch if you want to
pay
pay
for them. We're paying for that. I'm gonna let Mr. Bell look at it before we sign it and send it back. Cause they just sent a signed contract and said, this is what we'll do with this amount of money and. I don't wanna say, oh, the phone.
Meeting there, 3 visits, and that's it. So if nothing else, make it 3.
But I mean, if we need an extra visit a month, it shouldn't cost us any money. So that.
Cause they're already coming for, well, they come for planning once a month, so there's but codes and, or, but, BZA isn't held every month. It's only held when needed. But they were only coming for those two. And I couldn't get the last person to even come when we were working on some of the stuff, to even come to codes and zoning to help with that
And
committee.
they're not particularly responsive when we have questions. I don't understand. Anything else?
Mayor, did you say $18,000 a month?
No,
a year.
Yeah, I see your eyebrow on there.
I saw you swallow hard. I got
We're concerned about them coming twice a month for
I
$18,000.
have to say though, anytime I've reached out to them by email, they have always been very responsive.
Well, I've got a big meeting next week. We'll talk about grant writing, get to know them better. And a wish list of things we would like to accomplish, the signals out there. And there's a lot of money out there.
We seem to use their name a lot, saying, hey, GNRC wrote this, GNRC's recommended this, GNRC's. But then we're saying we're not getting much from them, so I'm kind of trying to understand.
And I'll tell you, their fee structure is pretty stout on admin fees when they do a grant. They take care of it.
So the grant writing is on top of the $18,000.
Yeah, so they've got a fee structure that they charge writing the grants.
Depending on the grant, you can get extremely time consuming. Some of them are simple, and some of them are just some of the most complex things you've ever seen.
And Landon, to address your statement there, they come to every planning commission. And then, of course, we give them assignments. They go off during the month, do things and then bring them back to us the next month. That's the minimum of what they should be doing for the money that, because each county around Nashville is part of the GNRC. We have the least amount that they're having to do, yet we're still paying, $18,000 a year to get them to do what in other areas Amy does just on top of her normal. So if that's all that they've been willing to do. I reached out to, I'm on planning, was chairman of codes and zoning. And when I would email the representative, I wouldn't get responses. She would respond back to Sam or Rosalie. And then they would tell me that, oh, she's not gonna be at this meeting or she can't be would never directly respond to me at all. Yeah, so.
Anything else? Anybody?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, we'll say, all in favor, say aye.
All right.
Thanks for being here, y'all.